tonight on CTV3 News. Elderly man killed in bicycle crash by SUV in Troll Farm. Driver is charged with manslaughter. Two persons from the community of Caledonia in the Curacao district lost their lives on Friday following a fishing trip. And from promise to performance, Prime Minister John Briceño unveils 2025-2026 budget, highlighting economic turnaround and record investments. These are some of the stories we have for you tonight in our newscast for Monday, May 12th, 2025.
It's the biggest pro SC card of the year, as 3 titles are at stake. As lightweight champion Marvel Mundo defends his belt against the #1 contender Raheem Lambe, and flyweight champion Jeffrey Martinez faces a hard-hitting Mexican Miguel Garcia Calderon. Thus KO specialist Diego Lopez from Honduras goes toe-to-toe with Kalen Smith from Belize City for the bantamweight belt. There will also be 11 other exciting MMA fights, including a special international female fight as May Blanco from Mexico faces the Nicaraguan Lady Oscarina Lopez in what is sure to be the fight of the night. General admission tickets are only $30 and VIP tickets are $100. On Saturday, May 17th, Prophecy Fighting Championship presents Pro FC 60 Martinez vs. Garcia, live from the Princess Vegas Hotel and Casino in Santa Elena, Curacao, exclusively on the Express Plus app.
Pro FC 16 is brought to you by Sherwin-Williams, DigiWallet, Curacao Commercial Free Zone, Bellikin Stout.
Electricity is essential for everyday life, but behind every outlet, a lot is happening to bring you safe, reliable, and sustainable energy. Let's start at the beginning. Independent power producers across Belize generate electricity using a mix of renewable and non-renewable resources. Electricity travels across a network of high-voltage transmission lines capable of transmitting electricity across long distances. Electricity then reaches your nearest substation, where it is adjusted to a lower voltage, making it safe to travel on the distribution lines you see in your community. From there, electricity makes its final journey from the distribution lines to your home, providing you with safe and reliable power when you need it. Belize Electricity Limited. We continue to serve you.
Good evening. With your news also simulcast on Fiesta FM 106.7, I am Joanna Rodriguez. An elderly man from the community of Troll Farm lost his life on Saturday night after he was knocked down while riding his bicycle home. The incident played out shortly before 9 on Saturday night on West San Martin Road near Puctevillas in the community of Troll Farm. Reports indicate that 52-year-old Francisco Melendez was riding his bicycle and was heading home when he was knocked from behind by a gray Ford SUV being driven at the time by 43-year-old Anastasia Bermudez, also from Troll Farm Village. Melendez was flung from his bicycle and sustained severe injuries to his head and body, including a broken leg and a large cut wound to the right temple. By the time police and medical personnel arrived at the scene, the elderly man was already dead. His body was transported to the Northern Regional Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival at around 10 p.m. Today, we visited Melendez's family in Troll Farm. His son confirmed that the elderly man was making his way home after doing some Mother's Day shopping in the town.
Firstly, my siblings, my brothers and my sisters, they learned through the life that someone was doing, and I didn't know I was at home just relaxing, and when my older sister called me and told me the news. It was shocking. It was unbelievable. I had seen my father a few minutes before the incident. I spoke with him. I told him, go home, take care. And he told me likewise. He told me, you take care because you're on a cycle. And I told him, you take care, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow. Which I was going to come here, which was yesterday, Sunday.
The father and son had spoken only minutes before the accident, and Melendez was reportedly excited to get home to present his wife with the gift he had thoughtfully picked out for her.
And it was very hard to see him just gone, taken away from us. It is unexplainable, unimaginable pain. My family is taking it very hard at this moment. My dad, he loved his wife, a very hardworking man, and even in his last moment, he thought about my mom. He was coming home, bringing her Mother's Day gift. And that's the most heart-wrenching part for us. And also the fact that he had told us earlier that day that he was planning to stop working completely, and it will be our turn now to making sure that he and my mom are okay. It hurt us as sons, daughters, everyone that knew my dad. They know that he was a hardworking person. He was always there for the community. And
Tonight, as the family tries to come to terms with the tragic loss of the patriarch of the family, his son is asking for a proper investigation to be conducted and justice to be served.
honestly, at this moment, we have not had like any much response of in terms of the police. Um, one female officer was taking the lead on the case. She did the sketch of the scene, everything. When me and my sister went into the police station on Sunday morning to make our report, they were making that my dad had a white shirt, which was not true. He had an olive burnt green t-shirt, and they were saying that my dad was in a beach cruiser yellow bicycle, which was not the case. He had a black bicycle, which was on the mobile that took his body to the morgue. And that really shocks me and makes me think the incompetence of the department itself. And it makes me think that we cannot trust. And that's the case that I as a son will stand firm. I'm standing as strong as I could for my entire family. And I will fight the case. Today, this morning, we were at the court where the person that knocked down and killed my dad was presented with 3 counts of manslaughter and also driving motor vehicle without due care and negligence. And the court was adjourned until the 11th of July, which we will be there. We will see each other in court. I will fight until the last for justice for my dad. He was taken away unjustly.
Melendez is remembered by his family as a loving father who was excited to celebrate his birthday in a few weeks.
His birthday was coming up. We were speaking just like around maybe 3 in the evening. I was here with him. He was laying in his hammock. I was speaking with him and I was telling him, Dad, did you know that El Trono de Mexico is coming to San Ignacio, Santa Elena to do a concert, one of his favorite bands. And I was thinking about taking him for Father's Day and also his birthday gift. Now all of that is taken away from us.
43-year-old Anastasia Bermudez has since been charged with 1 count of manslaughter by negligence, 1 count of driving a motor vehicle without due care and attention, and 1 count of negligence. He appeared in court this morning and was arraigned on all 3 charges. He is expected back in court later in July. Prime Minister John Briceño unveiled the country's 2025-2026 national budget today, emphasizing the government's progress from economic hardship to stability and growth. Under the theme From Promise to Performance, Briceño highlighted significant achievements since inheriting a fiscal crisis in 2020, contrasting the challenges start with Belize's recent economic successes. In his address, the Prime Minister reported that Belize's gross domestic product (GDP) grew by an impressive 8.2% in 2024. Unemployment has dropped sharply to 2.1%, reflecting a robust job market. Additionally, he announced that the country's debt-to-GDP ratio has been nearly halved from a high of 132% down to 61%. The government also managed to maintain fiscal discipline, closing FY 2024-2025 with a primary surplus of 1.48% of GDP and keeping the overall deficit tight at just 0.26%. We will delve deeper into that part of his presentation later on in the newscast. Looking ahead, the 2025-2026 budget projects revenue of $1.74 billion against expenditures of $1.78 billion. A record-breaking $528.8 million is allocated for capital projects aimed at fostering long-term development. These investments will prioritize health care, education, citizen security, and infrastructure.
For infrastructure development, $2.2 million for the Corozal to Sartenea Road project, $14.7 million for the upgrading of the George Price Highway from Belize City to Belmopan, $9.4 million for the upgrade of the George Price Highway from San Ignacio to Benque, $3.5 million $3.5 million for the upgrading of the Philip Corson Highway from Mile 8 to Mile 24, $4 million for specialized equipment, and a combined total of some $30 million for continued maintenance of roads, streets, and drains countrywide. Other significant allocations include, for health, $50 million for the popularization of the National Health Insurance Program. For education, $2.6 million for the Healthy Start feeding program, $2.2 million for Internet for schools, for social and economic development, $6.3 million for constituency development programs, $7.1 million for community support and small grants programs, $1.5 million for assistance to small farmers, $4.1 million for youth anti-violence multi-sectoral programs, for land development, $22.0 million for land acquisition payments and land surveys.
$184.9 million has been allotted for Capital 3 budget, including the energy sector.
$9 million for the construction of a solar plant, energy plant funded by the Saudi Fund for Development. A $15.5 million for renewable integration and resilient energy project funded by the World Bank. In health, $9.5 million for the construction of a state-of-the-art hospital in San Pedro Tong, funded by a grant from our highly valued bilateral partner and friend, the Republic of China, Taiwan. $6 million for a tertiary hospital in Belmopan, funded by the Saudi Fund for Development. In education, 7.7 million for the Skills for the Future program funded by the IDB, $5 million for the National Healthy Start program in economic transformation, 6.6 million for Sustainable and Inclusive Urban Development Program, an IDB-funded project to contribute to sustainable urban development of the municipalities in northern Belize. 10.4 million for the Belize Blue Cities and Beyond project, a World Bank project funded by IDA or IDA resources to support San Pedro, Alberguesque, Belize City, and Punta Gorda through capacity building, policy development, and infrastructure improvements, including 4 miles of paved roads in South San Pedro.
The nationwide rollout of the National Health Insurance NHI also forms part of this year's budget.
And in this financial year, as promised, the program would truly and finally become national with expansion that covers the 93,416 Belizeans of the Cayo district. When fully functional, the national NHI coverage will provide services valued at $80 million for its basic package. NHI is quintessential PUP, assuring every Belizean that health care is an entitlement, not a privilege. Bolstering the cause of social justice and tapping the dynamism of George Price's mixed economy.
The government also reported a 6-fold increase in profits from public management of the Bolida Lottery, contributing to the nation's revenue stream. Despite some economic uncertainties, such as rising tariffs in the United States and the uncertain status of a $125 million Millennium Challenge Corporation MCC compact, Briceño conveyed confidence through contingency plans supported by the World Bank's Catastrophe Deferred Drawdown Option (CAT-DDO).
We received an official word out of Washington that the MCC board would be terminating the compact agreement with Belize. But to date, we have not received any official word to this effect. In the meantime, Belize has expressed its concerns at every high levels in the United States government, and we have received assurances that the matter is being further examined to see if there is scope to retain the Belize program intact. We are therefore guardedly optimistic that the program will be retained. However, should the program indeed be terminated, we will be actively seeking alternate sources of funding from our development partners. We will keep this honorable House and the Belizean people appraised of this situation as it unfolds.
Tax reforms form a key part of the new budget, including the establishment of a semi-autonomous revenue authority, SARA, and the implementation of electronic invoicing systems to combat tax evasion. Briceño noted that more than 5,000 workers benefited from tax relief measures, adding approximately $5 million in disposable income to Belizeans' pockets. 2 persons from the community of Caledonia in the Corozal district lost their lives on Friday following a fishing trip where their skiff capsized. According to official police reports, shortly after 4 p.m. on Friday, 20-year-old Martin Serrano, 72-year-old Ricardo Gutierrez, and 23-year-old Dalner Joshan Gomez went on a fishing trip on the lagoon located between the villages of Caledonia and Buena Vista. Sometime during their time in the water, the small vessel capsized. Martin Serrano and Ricardo Gutierrez reportedly did not know how to swim and went underwater and did not resurface. After searching for his companions without any luck, the third individual got out of the water and sought help. An all-out search was promptly organized. However, the search party was not successful, and as night fell, the search was suspended until the next day. On Saturday morning, as the search party resumed, they were able to discover Serranos' body shortly after 5 a.m. A few hours later, shortly after 9 a.m., the body of Ricardo Gutierrez was also found and retrieved from the lagoon. Both bodies were transported to the Corozal Community Hospital morgue, where they are pending a post-mortem examination. Coming up next, Belize celebrates robust 2024 growth. PM Briceño declares economic recovery complete with an 8.2% GDP rate. Stay tuned.
Attention farmers, the New World screwworm is a serious threat to livestock, pets, wildlife and humans. It causes yield losses, damages the quality of meat and skins, and can even kill them if left untreated. Check your animals daily. If you see any wounds on them, treat them immediately. Prevention is key. Apply approved healing and fly repellents to the navel of newborn animals after dehorning, ear tagging, or any other practice that leaves wounds on your animals to ensure your animals' well-being. If you notice worms in unusual wounds, report them immediately. Call Baja at 824-4872 or text or WhatsApp 670-7003 or call your nearest Ministry of Agriculture office. And don't forget, never transport or receive animals with injuries. Together, we will prevent the spread of this dangerous disease. This message was brought to you by Baja, OIRSA, AICA, USDA, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Food Security and Enterprise.
Have you seen Lori?
Check in at the White Lotus, where paradise turns into a playground for the privileged, and every sun-soaked moment is dripping with intrigue. Stream The
Have a
White
wonderful
Lotus
last
on
day.
HBO Max, available with Centaur.
In his 2025-2026 budget speech delivered today, Prime Minister John Briceño confidently proclaimed that Belize's economic recovery is now complete and that the country is experiencing unstoppable growth. He highlighted the nation's remarkable progress, supported by data from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, which reported that Belize achieved an impressive real GDP growth rate of 8.2% in 2024. This growth rate places Belize as the second fastest in the Western Hemisphere, surpassed only by oil-rich Guyana, and marks the strongest economic performance among non-oil producing nations in the region.
In 2024, according to the recently published IMF data, the IMF, not us, Belize had the highest GDP growth rate in the Western Hemisphere at 8.2%, second only to the oil exporting nation of Guyana. "97 out of every 100 Belizeans who seek work are now working. The government has achieved a primary budget surplus each year whilst we have been in office. The minimum wage was raised for all workers by almost 50% to $5 per hour, which affected thousands of workers. And foreign direct investments has totaled $1.12 billion over the past 4-year period between January 21st to September 2024. Over $1 billion, never before in the history of Belize. Not only was default vanquished, but the debt to GDP ratio, which currently stands at 61%, a level achieved 7 years ahead of the IMF's projected timeline. Not only was devaluation vanquished, but the Belize dollar is stronger than ever sustained by combined central bank and commercial banks foreign exchange deposits of almost $2.2 billion.
The country's recent economic growth has been driven primarily by robust performances in the services and secondary sectors. Tourism, in particular, experienced a significant boost with overnight arrivals increasing by 10.7% compared to 2023, surpassing pre-pandemic levels and signaling a strong recovery in the industry. Foreign reserves remain solid at nearly $1 billion, providing roughly 4 months of import coverage. Meanwhile, the secondary sector grew by 5.7%, supported by gains in construction and electricity generation, despite facing some challenges in manufacturing. Prime Minister highlighted these achievements as part of a broader transformation, emphasizing that the most notable success is the reversal of the poverty crisis inherited from previous years. He announced a decline in the multidimensional poverty index to 22.1%, reflecting tangible progress in improving living standards across the nation. The Belize Police Department is currently investigating what is said to be a high-level cannabis smuggling ring with potential links to officers within the Customs Department. The investigation was launched after a box containing 15 pounds of high-grade marijuana, which was discovered in early April. According to reports, the package arrived as part of a regular freight shipment which was delivered from the U.S. The drugs were discovered as part of a routine check by customs officers who found the drug in tightly packaged bags. The discovered drugs is reportedly worth an estimated hundreds of thousands of dollars on the illicit market. Upon the discovery, however, the case was flagged since the officer on duty who made the discovery had reportedly received calls from 2 fellow customs officers, male and female, relatives urging him to clear the box. When the cannabis was discovered, the officer reported it to his supervisor and contacted the female officer, who was reportedly en route to collect the package. The matter was reported to the police, who are now working with the anti-money laundering unit to determine if any charges will be levied against anyone within the Customs Department.
We are doing a joint investigation with the police and the anti-money laundering unit. Yesterday, the investigators had applied for the court for a warrant to search the devices of those individuals who are involved. So the investigation is ongoing. Once the investigation is completed, the file will be forwarded to the DPP for her advice.
Will additional personnel from the Customs Department also be looked at?
We will go where the investigation leads us to. And if there's other additional persons who we have evidential material to detain and pursue them, we will do that.
How large is this apparent smuggling ring and how deep does it go? Are you able to say?
The investigation is still ongoing at this moment, so it's difficult for me to say.
So, but if it were people other than customs officers, the argument would be made, they would have already been dragged in to face charges. These are people who showed an active interest in this box, inquiring where the box is, bring out the box, special for me. That looks like criminal collusion.
We are doing an intense investigation, and hence the reason we don't want to jump and quickly charge anyone unless we have the evidential material to detain and charge them. Those custom officers that we have some evidential material on them, we have brought them in, they have been interviewed, and we are continuing the investigation.
Are they cooperating with police?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, so and in terms of records, police looking at records to see how long these persons had maybe had boxes arriving in their names?
Like I mentioned, the investigation is a thorough investigation that we are doing. Yesterday, the court finally approved for this warrant for us to search their devices in.
So this is before your time, but can you bring us up to speed with how the investigation went as far as it related to the child that died from Stella Maris School?
One of the standout achievements highlighted by the Prime Minister today during the 2025-2026 budget unveiling was Belize's remarkable decrease in its debt to GDP ratio. From a high of 132% in 2020 The ratio has been brought down to a more sustainable 61% in 2024. Meanwhile, the country's total public debt has remained relatively stable, increasing only slightly from 4.2 billion Belize dollars in 2020 to 4.42 billion Belize dollars in 2024.
At the close of the year 2020, the public debt stood at 4.2 billion Belize dollars. Remember this number, 4.2 billion dollars. At the close of 2024, remember when the opposition were hollering, all we're doing is just borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Well, at the close of 2024, that figure had hardly moved, estimated at Belize $4.42 billion. In those 4 years, though, the quantum of Belize's annual economic output had grown from $4.086 billion in 2020 to $6.825 billion at the close of 2024, or by some 67%. This figure includes a positive IMF-approved revaluation of GDP output. Consider our debt management approach in the context of interest payments. In 2021, the total interest payments were 105 million Belize dollars. In 2024, total interest payments were 119 million Belize dollars. In 2021, total interest payments represented 9 cents of every dollar of government total revenue and grants. In 2024, total interest payments represented 7 cents of that same dollar.
Speaking on borrowing cost, PM Briceño highlighted that Belize's interest rates remain exceptionally low, with an average of 2.5% on domestic debt and 3.5% on external debt. These rates are notably below the 4.3% paid by the United States on its 10-year Treasury bonds, illustrating favorable borrowing conditions for Belize. As of the end of 2024, Belize's domestic debt stood at 1.519 billion Belize dollars, while external debt amounted to 1.453 billion US dollars, according to data from the Central Bank of Belize. A further look at the country's public debt for 2024 shows that government spending on salaries for its estimated 15,000 plus public officers and teachers was $503 million, with an additional $132 million spent on pension and ex-gratia payments.
Put it differently, 52 cents of every dollar of government spending goes to salaries and pensions. 43 cents of every tax dollar was spent on salaries and pensions. Here is the bottom line. Government attained a primary surplus of 1.48% of GDP. Dollar was spent on salaries and pensions. Here is the bottom line. Government attained a primary surplus of 1.48% of GDP, an overall deficit of minus 0.26%, significantly overperforming the approved budget targets of 0.46% of 0.46% at the primary level and minus 1.3% for the overall budget. Government's financing needs, the amount of borrowing necessary for the entire budget year, was therefore only $18 million before the approximately $92 million allocated to amortization payments. This is a remarkable accomplishment by any measure and a direct consequence of a remarkable economy and remarkable public service.
And for this fiscal year, $698 million is allotted to salaries and pensions,
representing 56% of total recurrent spending. 56% of every dollar that the government of Belize spends is spent on salaries and pensions. This total represents a net increase year on year of $63 million, or about 10%.
A government-formed negotiation team chaired by Deputy Prime Minister Cordell Hyde will address concerns raised by teachers and work towards a resolution. This team was established after the Belize National Teachers Union (BNTU) announced plans for a demonstration in Belmopan. The BNTU is seeking an 8.5% salary increase. Today, Prime Minister John Briceño made a call for fruitful discussions.
With a voice of reason and a hand of friendship, Cabinet has authorized its negotiating committee to engage with the union representatives in good faith, recognizing that for the unions, time is of the essence. Having included in today's presentation the immense sums being spent on wages and pensions, I wish to underscore that government genuinely appreciates the value of the contribution to national development being made constantly by teachers, public servants, and members of the security forces. At the same time, we are obliged to protect for all Belizeans the fiscal gains achieved over these 4 years, so that default and devaluation can never again stock the public finances and the country. At current levels and as a percentage of revenues, the public sector payroll in Belize exceeds, and in many cases by large margins, the public sector payroll in the Caribbean and Latin America. And it should be clear that government has a duty, indeed an oath, to ensure that decisions are in the national interest. That is, in the interest of all taxpayers, not just the fraction that are government employees. I hope and expect that discussions can unfold constructively.
And there is more news after the break. Stay tuned.
It's the biggest Pro SC card of the year, as 3 titles are at stake. As lightweight champion Marvin Mundo defends his belt against the #1 contender Raheem Lambe, and flyweight champion Jeffrey Martinez faces a hard-hitting Mexican Miguel Garcia Calderon. Plus KO specialist Diego Lopez from Honduras goes toe-to-toe with Kalen Smith from Belize City for the bantamweight belt. There will also be 11 other exciting MMA fights, including a special international female fight as May Blanco from Mexico faces the Nicaraguan Lady Oscarina Lopez in what is sure to be the fight of the night. General admission tickets are only $30 and VIP tickets are $100. On Saturday, May 17th, Prophecy Fighting Championship presents Pro FC 60 Martinez versus Garcia, live from the Princess Vegas Hotel and Casino in Santa Elena, Corazon, exclusively on the Express Plus app.
Pro FC 16 is brought to you by Sherwin-Williams, DigiWallet, Carousel Commercial Free Zone, Bellikin Stout.
Prime Minister John Briceño presented the national budget this morning during a special sitting of the House of Representatives. For his second budget reading as Prime Minister, PM Briceño focused on his government's performance over the past 4 years. The budget debate for today's presentation has been scheduled for later this month. However, today the opposition leader, Honorable Tracy Panton, gave her preliminary reaction. The opposition leader, while noting that there were many areas of concern, says she will reserve her full review for the 26th.
A lot of figures jumped out at me, honestly. The devil is always in the details, and so I will reserve my comment on the budget presentation until the 26th when I respond. There seems to be quite a lot of money being invested in infrastructure, and my cursory look at the budget estimates suggests that where it matters for the Belizean people in education, in health, in housing, there are going to be some serious adjustments in terms of the government's investment. So we wait and see.
The Prime Minister said, if I recall correctly, that the figures hadn't changed much from last year to this year, I believe, in terms of expenditures.
I haven't looked at the figures, and I think it's very important for me to do that so that I can give a informed response to you. Ultimately, there has been, in my cursory review of the estimates, in listening to the Prime Minister this morning, there's no contingency planning for what happens. For example, with the global trade wars that are imminent and the impact that will have on our economy. There is no indication of how we are going to deal in a holistic way the energy crisis that we're already feeling the implications of, those kinds of things. So those things matter to the Belizean people. You know, he talked about, 40%, 45% of the budget being used for emoluments and pensions, and yet we have the teachers crying out because they are not being paid, even at the current levels. So there's lots to review, there's lots to analyze, and there's lots that we will respond to come the 26th of May.
Once again, the budget debate has been scheduled for the 26th and 27th of May. Opposition leader Honorable Tracy Panton today also spoke on the ongoing discontent of the teachers as they demand a salary adjustment. The issue, according to Panton, needs to be resolved quickly for the benefit of teachers and other public officers who serve the country on a daily basis.
Certainly, under a UDP administration, there was a salary increase for teachers. I think it was 30% over a period of time. And I think that the concerns of the teachers is not limited to an increase, but is to ensure that what is due them now is being paid and paid in a timely manner. I think there can be a graduated approach to how increases are given, and certainly there cannot be increases for CEOs and for the CABSEC without considering how that impacts the overall pay scale of the public service.
Panton also called on the government to reconsider their decision to grant CEOs and other top officials salary adjustments during a time when the people on the ground are clamoring for a fairer treatment.
Certainly that has to be a consideration, but why do the CEOs need an increase? What is the justification for giving the CEOs an increase? Even the CEO of education could not speak to the reason she got that increase. As far as she was concerned, they offered it to her and she took it. The public officers and the teachers are the movers and shakers of our economy, the movers and shakers in our country. They protect and provide public services to the people of Belize, and their concerns must be taken into account.
As Caribbean Mosquito Awareness Week unfolds, health authorities are taking significant steps to strengthen the fight against mosquito-borne diseases, especially dengue. This week saw the official distribution of 6 new ultra-low volume ULV foggers to each district's vector control unit, marking a substantial upgrade to the nation's mosquito control arsenal. Valued at approximately $170,000, These state-of-the-art fogging machines are set to play a crucial role in intensifying the country's efforts to curb mosquito populations, particularly in the anticipation of the rainy season when mosquito breeding and dengue cases tend to increase. The addition of these units will bring the total number of spraying vehicles and foggers in the national fleet to 20, allowing for broader and more frequent coverage across communities. The Ministry of Health reaffirmed its dedication to protecting public health through targeted investments in disease prevention tools. The new ULV foggers will enable vector control teams to respond more swiftly and effectively to emerging mosquito-related health threats, ensuring communities remain safer during peak transmission periods. As the country continues its efforts during Caribbean Mosquito Awareness Week observed from May 12th to the 16th, officials emphasize that these enhanced resources are a vital step towards reducing the impact of mosquito-borne illnesses and safeguarding the health of all citizens. And that's the news. We invite you to join us for another newscast on Tuesday, May 13th, here on CTV3 News and Fiesta FM 106.7. Remember that to read a text version of the news, you can visit our website at ctv3belizenews.com. You can also log on to our Facebook page for current stories at facebook.com/ctv3belizenews or our YouTube channel at CTV3 News BZ. From all of us here at CTV3 News, thank you for watching and listening. Good night.